welcome to episode 3 of Spirits, Dallas's new happy hour discussion with the up-and-coming artist and new talent of social media and new media. Our guest today is David Hopkins, local comic book writer and essayist here in the Dallas Metroplex.
Yeah.
Starting off this way, we're going to start off with the beers we're drinking. Dave, what are you drinking today?
I'm drinking a Lone Star, although generally I go with Shiner, but the Lone Star apparently is cheaper here tonight, so I figured I would drink some Texas beer.
Sounds good. And I'm along with him on the Texas beer. I'm drinking Franconia, the Winter Blend. Actually, is really good.
Oh, your beer sounds so much better than mine.
Bet yours doesn't taste like gingerbread.
It's water, flavored water.
For those who don't know, Franconia is actually a brewery up here in McKinney, Texas, about 10 minutes outside of Plano on 75. They have brewery tours all the time and beer tastings on the weekend, so if you guys get a chance, you should check it out. Anyway, so let's go and get started. As I mentioned, Dave, as I mentioned before, David's a comic book writer. How did you get started into the whole working of comic books?
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where things just kind of find you. I mean, I grew up reading comics as a kid. X-Men, X-Factor, New Mutants. I was pretty much a Marvel zombie. And, you know, you get into comics. I kind of got out of comics for a while when I got a little bit older.
Okay.
But I guess when I started hitting my early 20s, started reading comics again. I guess the real sort of origin story was I was offered to help write a play for a friend of mine.
Okay.
And I wrote the play to help her out with that. Through that experience, the play itself actually was an interesting experience, but it just wasn't my medium. I wasn't really comfortable working in theater, but I did like writing. And so it was like, okay, I like writing, but the theater stuff just does not work for me. So it came back to What About Comics?
Okay.
And I picked up a copy of Brian Michael Bendis's Power script book.
Okay.
Started reading that, started reading the Power scripts just to kind of get a feel for the medium, and really kind of jumped into it with no clue what I was doing whatsoever. And still have very little clue sometimes.
I think your first printed book was not the replacements, Karma Incorporated.
Yeah, that was the first one that ended up in previews.
Okay.
I had self-published a mini comic before that.
What was that called?
Some Other Day.
Okay.
And, but no, Karma Incorporated was actually the first one that ended up in comic book stores. I had done some anthology work before that, but yeah, Karma Incorporated was my first.
And that was published through Viper Comics, isn't it?
Yeah.
Here in Dallas, or I think it's Irving more so. But who did you work on that with that?
A wonderful guy named Tom Krasinski.
Okay.
He's actually a New York guy. We had met online, and I had liked his artwork. We were originally working on an adaptation of Antigone.
Okay.
That adaptation wasn't really going anywhere. I got this offer without having an artist attached. They wanted to publish Karma Incorporated. So I quickly emailed Tom and I was like, hey, forget Antigone, do you want to do this? And he was like, sounds great. So we started working on that as quickly as possible. I think I put together the first issue, the script, in about a week. Okay. And he did the first 5 pages at the end of the week, and we knocked it out really fast.
That's good.
In order to kind of show it to Viper, and they loved it, and kind of went from there. And Tom and I are still really good friends. We're always talking about what we want to work on next. Okay. So, he's a good guy.
And I think after that, your next book was Emily Edison.
Yes. Emily, I worked with Brock Rizzi,
okay,
who's actually also a local guy.
Okay.
We were already friends before either one of us were really into comics. I knew he was an artist, and I think at the point that I got published, we said, hey, why don't we see if we could work on something together. I sent Brock some ideas, and Emily was an idea that he had something similar that he was already thinking about. So we combined the two and started working on that. And yeah, Brock is absolutely a crazy guy to work with, because whatever ideas you send him, he's going to send you back 10 more.
That's good.
And so that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Okay. And the first book I really read of yours, I think you just finished up, was called Astronaut Dad.
Yes. Now what's funny is I wrote Astronaut Dad before I wrote Karma Incorporated or Emily Edison.
Oh, wow.
That was one that I wrote because when I first started writing comics, I was so just trying to figure out how to write comics, just the medium and the format. And I wrote this thing called The Insight, which has never been published and will never be published. It was one of those things you kind of write and then just put on a shelf somewhere. But right after that, I figured that I had been trying too hard to write something that I thought would be commercial, like something that a publisher would want. With Astronaut Dad, I said, okay, forget that. What would I write without any concern of whether or not it would get published or not? And Astronaut Dad, I knocked out in about a month. I just sat down in my room and just started writing the kind of story that I would want to read. But I didn't really have an artist for it. I just wrote it, set it aside, and it wasn't until I met Brent Schoonover that I said, this is the artist that would be perfect for this. He was working on another project at the time, but I waited and waited, and as soon as he was done, I was like, all right, what are you doing now? And that project, we've been working on it for such a long time, and even now, we have an agent that's trying to get us a new publisher for that to do a full collected edition of it.
And how many books is it?
It's 2 volumes.
Okay.
The first volume is out, but we're going to re-release it as a full collected 160-page graphic novel. It's killing us, though, because the whole thing's done.
Yeah.
I mean, it's finished. We just need someone to publish it.
But I want to get a little bit into, you also do some comics for a couple of the local magazines.
Yes.
You do one with, I think, artist Paul Milligan with D Magazine.
Yeah.
And the way I think you guys go with it, it's very much, I think it's, I don't know if I want to say making fun of or kind of doing enlightened jokes on parts of Dallas.
It's actually interesting how that thing came together, because I had met Trey Garrison, who's a comic book fan. He had read some stuff that I had written for Ben Bella.
Okay.
The Smart Pop series. I wrote something about Superman, and he really liked it. We met up, and I thought he was wanting to interview me about my comic book stuff, but I found out he was actually wanting me to write for D, in their Pulse section. I was like, oh man, that's even better. An interview, you get in there for 1 issue. I get to write stuff, they actually pay me. So, but after about a few months or so of writing stuff for D, just little bits and pieces here and there, I actually talked with Tim Rogers, their editor, about doing a comic for them, a full-page comic, and we decided it would almost be like, it would be legitimate. We go and we research stories. Like, he sends us on assignment, and we interview people, and I go and take notes, and then we put together a comic based on what we've found out.
Well, one of my favorite ones was numerous months back, but you did one on Victory Plaza. And I mean, really, I think it really hit home because, I mean, as much money as they've thrown into that place.
That was a hatchet job. We totally tore into that.
But it was great just because, nobody's ever down there. All the shops they've added, restaurants, they've almost started to shut down. Unless you have some huge event going on in the American Airlines Center, there's nobody down there. It's just...
Well, and they tried to fabricate a neighborhood.
Yeah.
And you just can't do that with the architecture the way that it is. It's very cold. It's very imposing. There's no neighborhood market or green area for dogs or for people to hang out.
I mean, there's one section in an apartment complex across the street that has like a small dog section you can take. I mean, minus that, there's nothing.
Yeah, and so now that one was a hard one to write, but even harder to illustrate, because we were trying to make this connection between Lost and Victory Plaza, and it just...
Okay.
I honestly don't know if that one worked as well as some of the other ones did, but it was fun to pick on Victory Plaza.
I'll admit straight up, I didn't get the Lost references because I do not like the show whatsoever. I'm one of these people that, honestly, I do not like Lost. American Idol and Lost are 2 shows I just should never jump on the bandwagon and just be like, I'm sorry, just...
Oh, I'm committed at this point. I've gone too far. I bought the first 4 seasons, so at this point I'm kind of stuck. I don't know if it was one of our best, but it's been fun picking on people, and it's kind of nice because when you're working for D Magazine, it does give you a little bit of freedom to poke fun at people without actually
hurting feelings.
Hurting feelings, because you're part of the machine at that point, and you can kind of poke fun. We dressed up Tony Romo as Princess Leia in one of the comics.
I missed that one.
Oh, that was great. I don't know if I'd want to meet Tony Romo in person if he knew that I was the guy that did that, but that's a fun one because we do research and we actually investigate it and we get it all plotted out. It's been interesting. We've been doing that for 2 years now.
Oh wow, that long.
And we're now in a routine where we do it every other month.
Oh, so it's not monthly or every
No,
month?
it'd be great if it was, but they're also pretty time consuming. I mean,
I can understand that.
it could take me a good week or so to do the research and get it all set up.
Okay.
And the emails to figure out what our story is going to be can sometimes be really tricky. So every other month is nice. Monthly would be even better, but it's good. It's been good for us.
And that leads me right into you now doing this comic strip for The Quick also.
Yeah, that one came out because I can only assume that because I did stuff for D, Quick saw what I was doing and wanted to see if I could do something for them as well. When I originally met with them, I didn't know if I was going to be doing a comic for them or if I was just going to consult on how they could do a comic.
Yeah.
And really, either way, I was going to be happy as long as I could help out like a local artist and maybe get someone set up with that. But as we were talking, I had an idea that was very different from what we were doing at D Magazine. D Magazine, they're news stories that are self-contained month to month, whereas the Quick Story, and I'm really surprised that they wanted to go with it, it's got continuity, where there's a story that's going to develop over time, and there's characters, and it's like what I do normally, except I'm doing it in a magazine or a newspaper format.
Okay, first of all, who are you doing the Quick comic strip with?
Chad Thomas, great guy.
Okay, yeah, I've seen some of his art. He's very talented.
Yeah.
What exactly is, and I admit I haven't actually had a chance to read the comic strip. What exactly is the strip about? I mean, that's not it's not self-contained.
Yeah, We've Never Met is about a girl named Liz.
Okay.
And she grew up in Highland Park. She went to Hockaday. She's a Dallas elite.
Okay.
And she left her family and she went to SMU and she left that sort of bubble of Dallas and went to the other side. She is now living in Expo Park. She's working two jobs, and she's trying to start a band.
Okay.
And part of it came out of this idea that, for me, I see that there are kind of two Dallases.
Oh, very much.
And there's that wealthier Dallas that I think most people think about. The big dollar, big hair, just big world, uptown, all that Dallas. And
then you've got your Deep Ellum kind of arts district, Bishop Arts, center, where it's you might drag a few of these people down there, but it's a totally separate,
It's a different world. And Liz is a character who made the jump from the one Dallas to the other Dallas.
Okay.
And yeah, it's about her trying to make it in a band, and she's also got relationship issues as well, and trying to find someone that she can connect with. It's going to be a fun story, but because it's every other week, it's going to take a long time for that story to develop, but I've got it mapped out.
And I don't think that'll be onto another subject. One thing I didn't know until about a few weeks ago, and as much as I would say I would like to, I listen to the program, I don't get nearly a chance because I don't remember about it, but Fanboy Radio, which is a local, I know one of your favorites, local, I guess, indie show, would you say, or?
Yeah, Fanboy Radio does, I mean, they interview everyone.
I know, they get everybody calling in to their station.
Alan Moore has been interviewed by Fanboy Radio. Stan Lee has been interviewed. I mean, when you got those two, you've covered everyone. But I do the indie show.
That's where I was coming with. I did not realize they had an indie show that apparently you've been the host for a little bit now, or?
Gosh, quite a few years. I don't even know how. I mean, it's on and off because
I never knew. Okay, all I know is Fanboy Radio. I think they only air like on Sundays now, or
only on Sundays now, and part of that's just because of Scott's other obligations.
Well, they're also off of like a TCU radio station, aren't they? Yeah. When does Indie Show broadcast? I mean, I've never heard of there being an Indie Show for them. I mean,
Indie Show used to be monthly, and now it's periodically, like whenever we can squeeze it in. Last one we did, gosh, we interviewed Charles Burns, but before that, gosh, I'm not even going to remember, but I mean, just whenever we're able to fit it in, we'll do an indie show, and usually I'll pick the guest, and I'll set that all up and get it organized, and it's really fun. I mean, I've been doing it for a while, but because I love indie comic books so much, it gives me a chance to talk with some of the people that I really admire, and it's been a lot of fun. And it's a nice way to get to meet other comic book creators.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like I said, when I heard that, I was just like, when? Please let me know. Because like I said, as much as I love the more typical, big publish superhero comics, I still love my indie press. Oni's one of my favorites,
Yeah.
and then Slave Labor Graphics was another one that on occasion puts out some pretty good books too. So.
Well, yeah, and we've interviewed like some of the small. Oh, the last one we did was the Kickstarter interviews, where what we interviewed Jamie Tanner and Gordon McAlpin, who both have Kickstarter.
Okay, what's Kickstarter?
Kickstarter is a website that helps fund projects.
Okay.
And they both were doing comic book projects through that. And we interviewed those guys, and we also interviewed the people who were starting Kickstarter. So we'll interview like really small-time creators, but then we've also done like Harvey Pekar, and Charles Burns was another big one for us.
Okay.
And so yeah, it's been a lot of fun. But as I said, it's because I don't know. Scott loves indie comics too, but I spend a little bit more time thinking about it than he does.
Gotcha. We're discussing the Indie Comic Week, which basically will be shipping a lot of the indie talent here in Dallas, and apparently also nationwide the week of December 30th in the comic shops.
Yeah.
I was talking to you and basically about how I was wrong. It was apparently the Space Gun Studio that started it, but then you came upon and asked them to be a part of your comic, and a lot of with other talent here in Dallas to do One Night Stand.
Yeah, and basically it was one of those things where you send out a mass email to every artist that you know, and you see who wants to work with you. So a lot of Dallas people, just because of my connections there, but a few people outside of Dallas, people that I'd worked with before, and even some people I hadn't worked with before. Christopher, who did Ghoulie Boys with Slave Labor Graphics. Signer Grace, who did Books with Pictures. So a lot of people that I know, either through Fanboy Radio connections or through conventions or locally, just friends of mine who they may not be able to commit to a 5-page short story.
Yeah.
They may not be able to commit to a 90-page graphic novel.
But a one-page.
They can do one page. So in many ways, One Night Stand, part of the joke of that whole comic is that it is technically a one-night stand with artists as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
Low commitment, one page. You're done, and then you can go home and think about what you just did.
I think one of the things was the fact that something that originally, I don't think had been mentioned on the discussion was for it to be like, nationwide was something that was a local disbursement of blog posts and videos. Yeah. Somehow gaining the interest, and now it's over 10 different states, and even Canada's picked up on it. So Illinois, Massachusetts, New York, California. You've got all these different stores and all these different And what was it? Have you totaled how many different states you're jumping on with this, or?
I don't know. I have 63 retailers that I'm sending stuff to.
Okay.
The funny thing is this will probably have a wider distribution than my last graphic novel did, and I'm publishing it myself. I think Indie Comic Book Week is something. The guys who've put a lot of work into it. Not me, but the people who are actually organizing the website. To me, this is something that they could do every year, just like 24-hour Comic Book Day or Free Comic Book Day. To me, the last Wednesday of every year should belong to Indie Comics.
I can see that, yeah.
Where we just send out your books and carry them.
It's definitely a time when you can give the talent who doesn't get the most recognition, the ones who are trying to push their artwork out there, get a chance to shine in front of everybody else.
Well, and I think it's an imperative for the retailers to spend, at least one Wednesday out of the 52 weeks of the year, spend one Wednesday to focus on some of your local talent.
Exactly.
Because you have people living, even if you live in Boise, Idaho, you've got talented comic book creators in your town who may never do anything for Marvel or DC, but they're working on their mini comics or doing their own thing, and I think it would be a great idea for retailers to spend 1 week out of the year to really focus on those people.
And it's not to say that their talent on art or writing isn't any less than the talent that's actually getting paid the big bucks out there in the big companies. I think, in my opinion, all talent should be acknowledged in some form or fashion. So
and at the same time, we got to acknowledge that some people they're just starting off. They may not be ready yet for a big publisher, but I think that there's something about that experience of putting your book together and just putting it out there. I know that I look at some of my earlier work. I don't know if it was all that great, but I think that there's something about just getting it out there that encouraged me to do more work. And I think when retailers, sure, the person writing that comic is not Mark Waid, they're not Jim Lee, but they're trying.
Yeah.
I think there's something about a retailer just simply, giving some shelf space to those people as simply a way to encourage creativity and growth within the industry.
No, and which I think is something that just, and I'm not going to say definitely needed, like with creativity, but I mean, as a teacher myself, it's like, I strive for that because I think, in a lot of classes, they get the same project over and over again, and so, you ask the students to do the same thing, like, model this or paint that or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I think, striving to get the new talent to actually come up with their own kind of piece and work out there is what really helps push them in the long run for their, to open up as their talent in the world.
Well, and I remember I many years ago I was in a band and
Really?
all sorts of things. But I remember the guy that I was with in that band, I played bass, and the guy told me that one live performance was worth 10 rehearsals.
I can see that. No, definitely.
And I think in comics, putting something actually on the shelf that people are going to read is worth all of the other stuff that never gets read.
Definitely.
Because all of a sudden you're getting feedback, you're getting honest opinions about your work, you're getting critiques, you're learning how to work with retailers. So in that regard, I think Indie Comic Book Week is just a wonderful thing.
And I definitely look forward to it because I mean, especially, your book and every other book that I'm going to pick up out that week. I think it's, it'll be nice to see, something fresh that you're not expecting from the normal talent that's already made a name for themselves.
And it challenges the consumer to begin looking at some new stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that's really hurting the comic book industry is the consumer patterns are pretty well locked in. There are people who only buy their X-Men comics every month. And not that we should ask them to start broadening their horizons, but we need to bring in an audience for some of the other genres and markets that are out there.
I mean, and not to take away from the indie world, but who's to say that the new indie talent now is not going to be the next Mark Waid or, Grant Morrison out there for, even the bigger books.
Yeah, and, Marvel and DC have done really well on capturing some of that indie talent and bringing them over. That's one of the reasons why I really respect Robert Kirkman. He dabbled with Marvel for a while, but his stuff he comes back to his indie stuff that he's been doing. I mean, Walking Dead and Invincible, it's so big now that you can't really call it indie.
No, but Invincible was still a good book.
It's creator-owned, though.
Yeah.
And so, he's dabbled with some of the larger companies, but he came back to doing his own stuff, which I really respect.
Definitely. Well, I think that's about all the time we've got.
All right.
Before we go, like I said, this is our show can be found at, if you guys want to watch us, we're at spiritswwb.wordpress.com. We're a bi-monthly podcast along with other posts and letting you know about the talent and just happenings here in Dallas. If you want to follow us on Twitter, my Twitter is Kyle1.0 on Twitter. Kyle1 point, spelled out Point 0. And also you can follow us at spirits_WWB at Twitter. If they want to follow you or find out more about you, where would they go?
Antiherocomics.com is kind of where everything, it's my hub.
Okay.
And then from there they can find my Twitter and Tumblr and Facebook and everything else. But antiherocomics.com.
Okay. And with that, I will see you guys next time.
I'm all out.
Yeah.
There we go.
Peace.
Done.